programme to Sky News in Dungannon.
Well, with us now is Brian Ford from the Institute of Biology and the author of this new book, BSE, The Facts. Brian, first of all, BSE is very worrying because CJD, the human equivalent, is such a deadly disease. No one recovers, do they?
They never do. Cows don't recover from BSE and people don't get better from CJD. But I don't actually think that what we've been seeing in the new young people is in fact Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. I believe that what we're seeing is a new strain of the old plague of the cannibals of Papua New Guinea, a disease called kuru. I don't know whether you saw, forgive me promoting a rival network, but on World in Action on ITV a couple of weeks ago, there was a horrifying home video of one of these youngsters tragically dying, and he lay there, his face in a fixed grin, looking at the camera as his mind was dissolved into little spaces. Now, the natives of New Guinea called their disease the laughing sickness, because that's what people did, and that's what's now happening in the West. With CJD, that doesn't happen.
If this disease, laughing disease, has been around for such a long time, how come we don't recognize it? Why do we think it's Creutzfeldt-Jakob?
I have a sneaky feeling it's simply because the notion that it might be kuru is simply too horrifying. But I was faxed the papers in The Lancet which announced this before they were published last month, and I noticed with interest that one of the doctors describes the microscopic appearance of the brains as having kuru-like appearances. And I don't doubt that privately, within medicine, people now recognize that we haven't got a strain of CJD, we have a strain of kuru.
There is no scientific evidence linking CJD, is there, with BSE at the moment?
No, there isn't, in the sense that nobody has actually taken the causative agent and injected it and produced the disease in people. You can't really do a thing like that. But the reason that we assume that these new cases do result is simply because since 1990 we have been looking very closely to see new cases, and 4 or 5 years, which is the kind of incubation period you'd expect, these 10 or 12 new cases suddenly appear. So the relationship must be more than coincidence.
Is it not reasonable to suppose that as it has jumped the species barrier from scrapie in sheep to cattle, that it could jump into man?
Yes, although there's no actual certainty that it ever jumped from scraping. It could have been, and I'm intrigued by this possibility, that BSE had always existed in cows, but had never been widespread enough to be noticed as a disease. And it could be that it was a cattle carcass that fed BSE back to other cattle rather than scraping.
You believe that the government has badly mismanaged this whole crisis, don't you?
I don't think you can question that fact. When Sir Richard Southwood, the eminent professor at Oxford, first was commissioned to chair a report that was going to be presented to the government in 1988, that's only a year after BSE was recognised in cattle, his statement that there is no suggestion that at the moment we have evidence that humans are at risk was widely quoted. You heard it, everyone at home heard it. What they didn't hear were 2 other sentences in that report. One of them said that it is possible the BSE agent may be transmitted orally by eating. And the other was the sentence that followed that one about there being no proof. He then wrote, if we are wrong in our supposition, the consequences would be extremely serious. The government told us the good news, but they were not honest. They concealed from us the genuine doubts that all scientists had from the very earliest days.
How sensible and effective is this cull of cattle over 30 months going to be?
It's a foolish measure. I have such sympathy when I see the scenes in your news report from Northern Ireland. The point is the symptoms begin to appear when cattle are about 30 months old. So if you slaughter them all, you can honestly go to Brussels and say, there you are, we've got rid of BSE, heedless of the fact that the infection may still be there. What we need is targeted slaughter to get rid of BSE and later to get rid of scrapie.
And finally, if you could just put the risk into perspective for us.
We are always surrounded by risks. The biggest risk you and I ever made was by getting born. That gives us a 100% chance of dying. The risks at the moment, on the basis of the present figures, mean that this new disease faces you with the same sort of hazard as being struck by lightning. If you drive to the shop, you have 1,000 times greater risk of suffering from that than you would do from eating the beef.
Brian J. Ford, thank you very much.
A pleasure.